Hello, hello. This is Biweeklycast. The host is still here, Dima engineer at Meta.
I'm Slava, CEO at Savvy.
And today would be somewhat virtual continuation of discussion that we had off mic a little while ago, talking about AI and increasing AI productivity. And kind of in particular today, I'd love to explore us. What is he saying? I would love to explore us. I would love us to explore.
Actually, I would like to explore us as well. So,
well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's actually true about kind of transitioning from using AI as just a tool to increase individual productivity to maybe going to the next level and trying to do something with more of agentic nature of AI.
requires a lot of definitions.
Okay, where do we start?
Agentic nature, or at least agent.
That's cool. I think that's a good place to start. Kind of AI as a tool, I would take to mean where you go into a chatbot, you ask it a question, or maybe even give it a little bit more of a sophisticated prompt, and it kind of gives you an answer. Kind of, this is a case where you're using AI as a tool to get some things done faster, maybe with kind of arguably sometimes better quality. And AI as an agent would be a situation where you give AI specific goal and ask it to achieve that goal. I know that sounds maybe a little bit abstract, but I guess for those software engineers in the audience, it would be something where you work with a coding agent and you tell it, like, I need a page that does XYZ, which communicates with the backend, kind of using these rules, or kind of this is the API to pick, and kind of go ahead and do that for me. So instead of giving like super precise, specific instruction to get specific outcome, you give it more of a expected outcome or a goal that you wanted to achieve.
That makes sense.
And I think there are many layers to that. And I think like recently I've been trying and playing a little bit with AI-based, I'm not sure how to call this thing, like personal assistant or something along those lines, like a secretary to an extent, which is supposedly should help you keep track of the different tasks and commitments and help you take notes, and that way kind of make you more productive and spare you from the need of maintaining those notes yourself. And I caught myself thinking that I do take notes. I kind of do a lot in Obsidian, kind of like I have daily notes, and I keep my thoughts there, ideas, tasks, and stuff like that. And I thought, like, well, I already doing this. I can use some help from this tool, and I started playing with it, and I figured that, oh no, like it's different. It's way different. In order to be effective using that tool, I need to kind of rethink some of the things. And in general, kind of the nature of work that I'm doing currently makes me think a lot more about how I do things and how I can scale that a little bit more. So that's kind of a general background for this thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think we should give it a try. How do you want to approach this conversation?
I think one particular aspect I wanted to explore is this kind of transition from increasing productivity by using a tool, like similar to like search engine is a tool that spares you from going to library, and it can increase your productivity. That way to scaling with by kind of increasing productivity not by doing things faster, but by being able to do more things by either employing kind of AI agents or, and I think it's not too dissimilar, by kind of hiring assistants or kind of building a team to help you work on different goals.
I think there is a slight confusion when we speak about agents, and I'm glad you gave your definition as an entity that you can delegate a goal to, not just a specific task. Because I think that in my bubble, many people, when they speak about agents, they just speak about a specific framework, tool set, a separate GPT agent with prepared preset of actions. And I think it was Claude, that
Claude Code
launched this new wave of agency. And right now, many people around try to experiment making Claude-based teams, with different set of skills. Would it be fair to say that when you speak about agents, you mean this, like when you basically have a set of interfaces that can operate and resolve problems for you?
This is such a great question, and I think you are right that you're right that kind of people often think about agents in this particular way. I think though that there is a spectrum of what we can call agentic behavior, and this is definitely on the kind of higher end of that spectrum. We almost like get into a territory where we have truly independent entities operating kind of almost 24/7, and you interact with them occasionally to give them inputs or get results from them. I also think that at the lower end, at a smaller scale, where it might not be as sophisticated as this, but like asking AI to perform a more complex series of steps, to me also gets a little bit into that agentic behavior territory where more things happen without your direct command and without your direct control. And I guess maybe in this, given that I've said that I want to explore transition from individual personal productivity to kind of something scaling enabled with AI, I would probably be looking at this first stage where we have kind of more complex workflows being performed by AI, not necessarily full-fledged agent setup, but I think like this step is necessary to get effective agentic setup.
Can I have one more clarification before we move on? Where would you put a line where the tool ends and the agency starts? Like what would be the... Because right now when you described it, once again, it kind of got a bit wishy-washy into just the way I sophisticatedly use let's say GPT as a tool with more complex prompts versus the agent usage as you mean it.
I think it might be a little bit easier to define using something as a tool. That would be something that I'm thinking through it and I think like, oh no, like it might not be as easy to define this, but the tool to me is something where you kind of ask it to ask quote unquote, because tools can be different. You give the tool direct instructions to produce output, and that output in a very direct way is defined by kind of the nature of the tool and your instructions. Like, I guess that this simplest analogy would be kind of Google search, right? You give it, you're almost saying, find me web pages mentioning or kind of talking about X. It does its thing kind of super quickly, magically, and it spits out the result, and then you interpret that output that you get from the thing and consume it and kind of take it further. Kind of a step where it's a little bit more where we start getting into I almost regret the word starting using the word agent in this context. Into more kind of agentic / complex behavior territory would be that something where you provide instructions or you provide inputs to something, but these are not direct instruction of what needs to be or on what needs to be carried out. Like if you go and ask, like even ChatGPT, you go and ask like research topic X for me, it starts getting into this more complex behavior territory because you don't tell it go to this magazine, search for this, and kind of interpret things in this particular way. The instruction implies a little bit more agency. Well, there goes this word on the part of executor.
Would it be fair to say that tools is a territory that you could, on human language, assign as junior specialists, and people who are more middle and senior would be agent kind of tasks, like things you would delegate to?
I wouldn't even put tools even at junior level. It's like my camera, but it is a tool. There are cameras that are better. There are cameras that are worse. Like there are tools that are better, tools that are worse, but camera very directly does what I tell it to do by pressing buttons and stuff like that. Whereas even with the junior assistant photographer, you cannot. It's just the nature. But when you ask them to do something, they would inevitably apply their own kind of thinking and judgment to what they're doing. And when there emerges this element of needing to pass some sort of a judgment, this is where I think we start getting a little bit into the agentic territory.
Can we make an experiment? I'll tell you 3 latest tasks that I did using LLMs, and you could tell me whether it's the territory of tools or.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, let's do it.
The first one is co-designing a strategy review session for my company. I have a desirable outcome. I explained the scenario that I see. I asked to challenge this scenario and suggest alternatives, and then help me communicate with the team, put together the task list, preparation, and everything around this strategy review.
It's a tough one. I think it's a little bit borderline, because I think there are different possibilities, and you tell me which one is true. If you did in this process, if you did quite a lot of hand holding, saying, all right, like give me this specific thing, it gives you thing back. You ask like take this thing and kind of do the next thing. I would think that this is more of a tool based workflow, but maybe if you took it a step or several steps further, saying that, okay, I'm doing this, these are the criteria for how this thing should be considered good, and so on and so forth, and then you gave I don't know, maybe it was an AI assistant or something that you have, like you give it kind of more elaborate instructions. I think that it is in my mind where I'm sitting now would be getting into more of agentic territory.
The second one, I would like to buy a car cover, like something to cover one of the cars that a tent, or I don't know what to name it.
Yeah, I think it's cover. Like what else can it be?
So I've asked my LLM to be sales manager to basically ask me all the questions it needs to understand what I need and then help me choose and buy what I need.
So you're a master of tough questions. I think maybe it might be a bit controversial, but I would say that this is more of a tool-like use case because you give it direct in instructions, and all the kind of further interpretation or refinement of result is on you. Plus, you are very kind of directly involved in the process because you're answering questions and whatnot.
All right, then the third one. I was running a research on what change theory is. And I've asked to actually go through this research without any clear guidelines what to do first, second, or third. I just explained my intention, that what I'm working on and what kind of help I could use in general to get deeper into this topic.
That one, I would imagine, kind of that would be kind of in my books now in the kind of agentic type of a task or a territory, and then depending on which specific tooling that you use for that, kind of if you ask this, if you go to ChatGPT and ask it there, it will be, I guess, more of a yeah, let me go with this assumption, more of kind of a prompt engineer type of a thing. But then if you go into Claude Code, I can imagine that it can say, oh, I need to do XYZ thing. Like it will think it in its own little brain and say, oh, I need to spawn a kind of XYZ things to go pull the data, do something, and then compile the result, which would be more of a kind of truly technically truly agentic kind of behavior.
Would it be oversimplification to say that do this for me is a tool, do it with me is the border thing, depending on how much you delegate, and think for me would be closer to agency?
I would both agree and disagree. I think it might be interesting to pick the thing for me thing, because I think it is really interesting in context of AI. I would agree that if you do kind of this specific thing for me, and it's also like do research is very different from do find something nearby. Kind of those levels of complexity on those things are different, but roughly, if like do very specific thing for me, where there is not much interpretation that goes, or kind of judging the outcome apart from you looking at this and consuming it. Kind of that would be the tool, and everything else kind of gets into more, starts getting into agentic complex behavior territory.
All right, that makes sense.
And I think maybe we can talk about like think for me kind of thing. But with this research example, I think it is a good case where one needs to start thinking and externalizing their thinking process more to get better result from the tool. Because if you do research on topic XYZ for me, I'm sure like any AI kind of thingy would come up with elaborate write up on this thing. But then the question becomes like, how do you know that this is the thing that you need? Like, how would you verify that what you've done is actually what you expected? And how do you know that the thing that you've got, in case of research, covers what needed to be researched?
And then again, I think there are two layers here: the layer of giving instructions how to do it, and the success criteria, like what you expect to see at the end without an explanation how to do that.
Right, exactly. And I also think that even it may not only it may require kind of you being able to give the success criteria to the machine so it can do its thing a little bit better, but also for your own sake, when you by and large you're delegating more complex tasks to someone like this. I came across the phrase synthetic labor, uh, which is funny in its own way. You delegate this task to this synthetic labor and you get something as a result. How would you know that you can trust and kind of take this output and take it further to the next steps of the process? And I think that this challenge is no different from how you delegate something like this to other people in the team. And I think that there needs to be certain asymmetry between the tasks. Like ideally, kind of to get the maximum benefit, you would want to delegate a task that takes a lot of time to do, but hopefully doesn't take a lot to verify, because then you are getting kind of maximum benefit, and kind of then understanding which kind of tasks are like that and kind of starting delegation with those makes sense, because sometimes, and I've been there, verifying that the task is done right is done by doing the task yourself and comparing the output, at which point the question is, where's the productivity gain?
Have you prepared the notes for this episode using AI?
Yes, I must confess.
As a tool or as an agent?
I think I would say it was more of a tool, like kind of mingling, helping me to mingle with my thoughts. Yes.
And why do you think this distinction is important?
Between what?
Tool-based AI and productivity, and AI-based usage and productivity.
I think the reason why I think it is important is that with two things there. First is that you can only get as much done by using better tools. If you faster camera, faster computer, some like better books or kind of better printer, whatever else it might be, you can only gain as much by increasing kind of intensity of the work. But then if you start scaling out kind of extensively, kind of quote unquote, hire more people and assistants by increasing productivity that way, you can do more and pursue goals that are more ambitious and goals which no one single tool in its narrow sense can help achieve. That's number one. And then number two, kind of these two kinds of productivity are different, and skill set required for them is different. And current thinking, including my current thinking, is that with AI, if the promised productivity gains with AI are to come about, they would most likely be of that latter kind, where you get possibility to do more by quote unquote employing more synthetic labor and kind of figuring out and developing skills and building muscle for delegating work effectively, and kind of later on coordinating work effectively across those synthetic entities would be one of the keys to reaping the benefits of AI age. What a proclamation, huh?
Do you think you could make an AI agent to train you? to delegate more at higher levels to agents?
That is a tricky question, because on one hand, the answer would be yes. But on the other hand, kind of circling back to what we discussed, how would you verify that it's actually training you towards that specific thing? It may give you questions, it may give you tasks, it may tell you something, give you educational materials, but you still need, it's on you to verify that this training is going in the right direction.
But I mean, isn't it true for non-synthetic labor as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there is a lot, and like a lot in all capital letters overlap with delegating to non-synthetic entities. So it's a poor choice of words. But what is also important and interesting is not all of us are trained to do that kind of thing, right? Like we expect managers to be able to do that and organize work of multiple individuals, individual entities effectively. But if someone, myself as like an engineer, what is called individual contributor, we don't necessarily kind of develop those muscles to be able to delegate to someone else. We might have kind of quite a strong muscle to delegating things to ourselves, kind of decomposing work and saying like, oh, I will do this tomorrow, but it's still me doing this thing tomorrow. So benefiting from all the context and kind of all the knowledge I have about it, and assigning the same task to a different person requires a separate effort for that task to be done successfully and in a useful way.
I think to operate with these subjects effectively, you probably need a lot of terms, like a lot of definitions for levels of delegation, for seniority levels of tasks, like the complexity, whether it's a simple, middle, heavy levels of activities. And I don't know many managers who actually do that, like in either a synthetic or any other kind. Basically, my assumption is that most managers would still use it at pretty much basic layers for quite a while until someone showcases how to do it on the next level. That's what Claude Cowork was trying to do when they launched this interface ecosystemish thing. I don't know how to name it properly, but the competence of most people around me in my bubble wouldn't let them delegate things at the higher level, because what you were describing is that you basically have to go from delegating the task to delegating the solution with checkpoints, to delegating the problem statements and solutions with the checkpoints, to delegating the responsibility and the area of something where they have to state the problems, suggest the solutions, suggest the checkpoints, and you would basically just monitor what's happening. And your entire function is to wait and see how things are happening and unwinding. And I don't know many people who do it in real life. So the complexity of the task and the level of competency needed to operate with that is quite high. Maybe your bubble is different, but like that's what I see around me.
No, I totally agree with you, and I think that this is maybe a little bit of a disconnect that I was trying to get at. Like if we were to believe that productivity gains are coming from this kind of new behavior, many of us aren't well equipped to capitalize or make use of that. And like I said in the beginning, I catch myself thinking about how I do my work these days a lot more than when I did it previously. And I think what you described with levels of tasks and levels of delegation, I was able to paint a kind of to me, it seems a kind of a compelling picture in my head, and I'll try to describe it to you now, and then I'll try to draw it later. So in order to scale your kind of capability, kind of scale the scope of task or things that you could accomplish, presently you would need to kind of climb corporate ladder, so to speak, right? Because the higher you are, the more quote unquote resources you can command, you can delegate at a higher level, and all of those things that come with being able to command greater amounts of resources. What I think is happening now, we get a possibility to still, like, someone can be still at the lower level of hierarchy, like individual contributor, and they can start building out that pyramid down. Instead of themselves moving up, they can build pyramid down with synthetic labor and start getting into the executive level delegation territory by starting coordinating those AI entities. But you are absolutely right, that requires entirely different approach and even mindset and skill set to be able to do that effectively. We did a decent job of exploring the kind of the fringe of transition and challenges and problems in there. What I love so much about the conversations we have is that you kind of poke into the things that help uncover more and more depth in the problem or the thing that we are discussing. Really makes me think, and it is great chatting with you about that.
I had a lot of fun too, because I don't think about these kind of issues when I have free time, and I wouldn't think about it for a while. So I'm really grateful that you brought up the topic.
Awesome. And to our listeners, we hope to maybe hear from you about how you think about this stuff and how you employ synthetic labor, and where are your agentic empires. Let us know.
Or maybe what your agents think of this conversation.
That's a good question.
So, good weeks.
Good weeks.